I'm meteorologist Nicholas Herboso with Fox 10 News. This is an update on potential tropical cyclone number 18, Sunday evening update, as we could have a Gulf storm in the week ahead. We're keeping an eye on that. Here's the current particulars on the storm. This is not a tropical system yet. This is a designation that is used by the National Hurricane Center so they can issue advisories and get a cone out. And they do have watches and warnings out for some of the Caribbean islands. Tropical storm impacts are possible, maybe even hurricane impacts for some of the islands like Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and Cuba there. You see the cluster of thunderstorms near the center of the storm. This thing does not have a defined center of circulation yet, but expect to become a tropical storm very soon, possibly as soon as overnight. Monday, 1 a.m., there you see 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. At that point, we'd have a defined center of circulation and get a better idea of where this thing is going in the future. You see some agreement in the forecast track here, some tightness in the forecast track in the near term. A lot of forecast models show this thing turning northwest and crossing over Cuba as a Category 1 hurricane. This will be on Wednesday. Wednesday, 1 a.m., hurricane impacts possible for the western point of Cuba there, crossing over Cuba as possibly a hurricane. There's some variation in the forecast intensity as well in the forecast models. Then emerging into the Gulf of Mexico. Towards the end of the week, we could see a system approaching the central or eastern Gulf Coast. There's quite a wide range of track possibilities. This storm is expected to slow down and weaken as it approaches the Gulf Coast at the end of this week and into this weekend. And you can see portions of the Fox 10 viewing area are already in the forecast cone. So looking at the big picture here, there are some next steps for us, what we need to look for in the next few hours as we track potential tropical cyclone 18. One thing that we're looking for is the development into a depression or a storm. At that point, this system gets a well-defined, or at least a better defined, center of circulation for the forecast models to run from. Right now, the forecast models are guessing on that initial position. Makes the forecast in the long range a little harder. Once we get that, we'll get a little more confidence. Beyond that point, we're going to start to track this thing as it moves towards the island of Cuba and then eventually into the Gulf of Mexico. At that point, we'll look at fine-tuning the forecast and pinpointing a landfall point along the Gulf Coast. Let's look at some of the forecast models. This is with your spaghetti plot. So where is the center of circulation? This line shows where the potential center of circulation could be going. You can see it entering to the Gulf of Mexico with some agreement here in the forecast models through Wednesday evening. Then beyond that point, a couple things happen here. The steering flow does get a bit weaker, so we actually see a slowdown in the forecast model track, and also you see them spreading out slightly. The blue line there you see going into Louisiana, that is actually the GFS forecast model run from the 12Z suite of models. I will tell you that since the 18Z models have come out, this line has shifted all the way to Florida. So there's quite the range of possibilities along the central Gulf Coast and all the way to the west coast of Florida in the Big Bend region. So lots of folks are going to have to keep an eye on this one. It's too early. It is simply too early to determine exact impacts. I do want to zero in on the GFS forecast model. We're going to look at an ensemble approach. These are the different ensemble members of the GFS, essentially different versions of the GFS to look at. And we're looking at, once again, the spaghetti track. So where's the center of circulation of this thing? You can see the latest forecast model runs spread out a lot once we get to Wednesday. And late in the week, you have some that are tracking into the western Gulf of Mexico, while others move into the central Gulf Coast or even into Florida. So there's quite a range of possibilities here. Understand that there's going to be uncertainty, and over the next few days, the forecast models are going to be shifting wildly back and forth until we get a more defined solution for the Gulf Coast impacts. Right now, we understand that Caribbean impacts are the main priority, but once this goes beyond and starts to threaten the United States, there are a lot of question marks. With that being said, you're going to be watching the forecast models a lot over the coming days. I wanted to show you what they look like right now as of Sunday evening. This storm becoming better organized. The next name on the list is Rafael, and we could see that happening tonight as we saw in the official forecast track. This is Tuesday, early morning, that's midnight here near Jamaica, strengthening as a tropical storm, maybe even into a hurricane as it approaches Cuba. This is the 18Z run of the GFS, where it is now hugging the coast of Florida. So I mentioned that there have been some pretty significant shifts in the models recently, and that will continue to happen. So we're not going to focus on the exact details. One thing we do know, though, when this thing gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it's likely to encounter the slightly cooler waters and also the higher wind shear. Therefore, whatever approaches the coast will likely be weakening. This forecast model taking a more eastern track. Some forecasts have headed more towards the central Gulf Coast. Either way, an increased rain chance for some portion of the Gulf Coast as we end the week. This is Thursday into Friday. That's going to be the deal. What are we expecting locally? This is in the Fox 10 viewing area, the Mobile, Pensacola area. Regardless of what happens, we are going to continue to deal with dangerous, life-threatening rip currents at our beaches. It's still warm here, and I've seen a few folks down at the beaches. So that's going to be something that we watch very closely. Dangerous surf is expected this week and into this weekend. Also, that higher rain chance that I mentioned, we're confident that we will see some kind of increase in rain chances Thursday into Friday. So we definitely need that rain, and that would be very beneficial for us on the Gulf Coast. So that is a good thing coming out of this system, regardless even of exactly where it goes. It looks like rain chances will go up either way. Uncertainties do remain, and the exact local impacts are still to be determined. And I say coming soon because once we get to Tuesday, Wednesday, we will have a better idea where this is going. Therefore, we have a better idea of what the end result will be for us locally. We ask that you stay tuned to the forecast. Let's look at some things that we do know right now. This is the steering flow as seen on the GFS forecast model. A ridge of high pressure is located to the north of the system, and that is the reason why this thing is not moving out to sea. That high pressure system blocks the path, moving it out to sea. Therefore, it takes that northwesterly turn and moves into the Gulf of Mexico. At that point, the steering flow will weaken. This thing starts to slow down. We've seen that on the forecast models, and it has a variety of places it could go. Let's think back to those GFS ensemble models that I showed you earlier. Still some of them going into the western Gulf of Mexico. With a weaker steering flow, that is a possibility. That's why we're saying a large area, a wide area of the Gulf Coast wants to keep an eye on this at this time for potential impacts. And of course, those impacts are somewhat unknown at this time because we don't have that detail of where it is going. We just have the general idea. Other things that we're dealing with, slightly lower water temperatures once we get closer to the coast. So as this thing is approaching somewhere along the Gulf Coast, look at these water temperatures. They're in the upper 70s. That is not as supportive of a strong system. Could we have a hurricane in the southern Gulf? Yes, I think that is very possible. Some forecast models try to show a slightly stronger storm. But to maintain that strength, you need really warm waters. And at this point, late in the season, we do not have that. So it's likely that we will see a steady state or weakening of the system as it approaches. Also, it's likely that we will see increasing wind shear as the storm approaches the coast. We have fronts, we have the jet stream that is farther south, so that will impact the system. And if we look at the maps, you can actually see the jet stream across the southern United States. That will likely prevent any strengthening and likely weaken the storm wherever it goes as it approaches the Gulf Coast at the end of this week. Let's look at some history. This is interesting. I went and pulled up some November storms, Gulf of Mexico landfalls. Every single one of these weakened, and this is interesting. I want to point out Ida in 2009 actually was a hurricane near Cuba there, Category 2, weakened to that lighter color Category 1 tropical storm, then became Category 1 again right before, and then weakened again and actually became a remnant low before it made landfall near Point Clear, Alabama. So understand that a lot of these, in fact, all of these storms weakened before landfall. Also, Ada in 2020, there's a hurricane, then weakened into a tropical storm at that point. So a lot of November storms weakened before landfall. So what's the kind of bottom line overall thing? You're going to be monitoring for impacts along the Gulf Coast as we head into the late part of the week and into the weekend. So just keep an eye on the forecast. Stay tuned to your local meteorologists. We'll be keeping you updated all the way through. This could provide some very beneficial rain for us. That is a great thing. However, Other impacts are to be determined. We will, of course, keep you updated. So let's actually look at our rain forecast. This is our rain chances forecast over the next few days. And you see we bumped the rain chances. They're not super high, but to 40% right now. Will these numbers go up later on? Possibly, especially if it does look like the system will be coming towards the central Gulf Coast. We would be at a part of a storm where we could get some very much needed rain. Why do we need the rain? Well, let's look at the drought monitor. This is incredible to see. Severe drought for portions of our area. You see that orange color there, also into Louisiana. So this rain would be very, very beneficial. And good news is we do have small rain chances in the coming days. Looking at our local forecast now, Election Day Tuesday, that 30% chance of showers. We saw some showers today, so I'm keeping around that 20-30% over the next few days. Here's your day planner for tomorrow in Mobile. Scattered clouds around. Temperatures will be warm in the 80s, most likely, warming quickly through the 70s. Could we see a morning shower, scattered storm? That is very, very possible. Winds will also be strong out of the southeast as well, around 10 to 15 miles per hour. Your forecast planner for tomorrow in Pensacola, temperatures will be right around 80 degrees in the afternoon. Scattered clouds around, maybe slightly clearer in the evening according to this forecast. Also noting that stronger southeasterly wind and a high risk of rip currents already in place at our Gulf Coast beaches. Here's a look at the futurecast. You can see those morning storms popping up in the HRRR forecast model. As you're out on Monday morning, be ready for the possibility of rain. And then they become more scattered all the way through the forecast here as we go through noon and into the afternoon. We're just going to be keeping an eye on things, of course, with scattered showers around. You can track that with the Fox 10 weather app. Great tool to use. They'll actually give you rainfall alerts as well if rain is in your area. Pushing this all the way to Election Day Tuesday, so a mild night overnight, Monday night into Tuesday morning, and Tuesday morning some scattered showers possible once again. Therefore, we have that around 20 to 30% chance of rain. Here's that Election Day planner. Make sure you get out and vote. Looks like we could have some scattered showers around, so if you're voting early, you might need an umbrella just in case. It looks like the forecast might clear up. The planner shows us clearing up a little bit towards the evening time. Here's your 7-day outlook. We're going to be watching the tropics later in the week. Right now, we just have that 40% chance of rain in there. Temperatures maybe going down to around 80 degrees with the extra cloud cover that we have there. Otherwise, we're just going to keep an eye on things. There's nothing to panic about at all. This is a November tropical system, and indications are that we'd see a tropical storm, at least according to the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, somewhere along the Gulf Coast. It does not mean here. So we're going to keep an eye on this, and we will keep you updated. Of course, just wanted to give a longer form update on this. You can check the website, fox10tv.com, for regular updates. We're going to be updating you on air on Fox 10 News all the way through the week, giving you the latest information there, and of course updating your daily forecast as well. For now, I'm meteorologist Nicholas Herboso.